The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it another couple minutes for a few more people who are just showing up. We'll be right back. All right, we can get started. Anyone that shows up after the fact here will catch the good content as well. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Who knew a hedgehog could make IT life easier? Not literally a hedgehog. Spoiler alert, I doubt a hedgehog will do anything for you. IGEL, on the other hand, will. So what is the parallel? Well, in English, IGEL means hedgehog, and that's the hedgehog we're going to talk about today. Oops. I am Matthew Metulski, the CEO for Third Octet, and today marks the first of our three-part series around IGEL, the who, what, and why of IGEL. We'll initially be focusing on a high-level overview of IGEL, followed by a brief demonstration of the user experience. In December, a review of IGEL's management capabilities, and lastly, in January, a deeper dive and complimentary workshop on the ins and outs of the entire IGEL portfolio. These dates will be subject to change, so please watch for future invites. I am joined today by my esteemed colleagues, Ed Mathewson, Director of Professional Services for Third Octet, and Mike Berman, SE Extraordinaire for IGEL. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Matt. Morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone.
So combined, the three of us have over 60 years of experience in end-user computing, especially with Citrix. Quick housekeeping, this webinar will be available on demand on our website later in the week. If you'd like PDF copies of the slide, please feel free to ask. And lastly, if you have any questions during the event, please drop them in the GoToMeeting chat area as we are reserving some time at the end. And don't be shy, I won't call out your name. We're also giving you the opportunity to experience IGEL for yourself, if you're interested, with a fully personalized UD Pocket that you can try in your own environment. And at our next event, we'll show you how we made these UD Pockets function. More importantly, and I hope this is not the reason why everyone is here today, we're giving one of you a $200 Indigo gift card. Unfortunately, they do not sell IGEL at Indigo, but I'm sure you could pick up a few nice books on Citrix or Microsoft, or some puzzles to keep you occupied over the next, well, hopefully a couple weeks, but probably a couple months. Mike, Ed, and myself are excluded from the draw. Good luck to everyone joining today. So as a CEO, I must spend a few hours, seconds, on who Third Octet is. After all, we're an IT organization that promotes work-life balance, a topic that has been of utmost importance over the past several years and exponentially over the past several months. For Third Octet, work-life balance is a core belief that we approach from two lenses. The first lens is how we approach IT and identify areas where we can minimize technology-related stressors on IT's mental and physical well-being. As I'm sure you're all aware, IT has been experiencing massive burnout as late, compounded significantly by the pandemic and shift to remote work. We're all inundated with longer hours, increasing demands and workflow disruptions, forcing us to relearn how to do things for our staff. If we can leverage technology solutions to ease that burden, streamline operations, and afford for simplified implementation at scale, we can potentially restore balance in the lives of IT and allow some subjective definition of work-life balance. On the other hand, our end users and staff are also inundated. And the last thing we need to do as IT is introduce more complexity to an overly stressed and challenged situation. Our users want to get work done, bottom line. And they want to feel great about the type and volume of work they complete. We believe that if people feel accomplished in their daily work, meaning they've accomplished their tasks, they can detach from work easier and enjoy their own time. If technology gets in the way of their success, stress increases. So we look to leverage technologies such as solutions from IGEL, Citrix, and Microsoft to ensure our users can get their work done whenever, wherever, and however they choose. By leveraging our expertise in digital workspaces collaboration, hybrid cloud, and automation, we can provide work-life balance across both lenses for IT and for users. And this is how we as a company and as individuals better the world through technology. And really, I'm proud to work alongside IGEL, where we have unique but rather similar visions. Ours to better the world through technology to achieve work-life balance. IGEL to transform the way the world works, creating better outcomes for people, organizations, and our planet. We're both here to create better outcomes, to create a better world and make it easier for you to work. And this is great for us, our people, and our planet. So how did we get here to the quote-unquote third era of computing? I was born in the late 70s, so my only recollections of the centralized computing era is found in pictures and books I've read, perhaps some movies. I default to war games, but I don't think that was put out pre-1980s. Mainframes and terminals, ARPANET is what comes to mind. In Era 2, we went through several phases of distributed computing, from multiple distributed servers to high-density server farms. Technologies such as Citrix started to come to market to address the challenges around several of these computing models and how best to deliver services. And also at this point, WinFrame and Ed Matthewson come to mind. In today's era, the cloud computing era, we're faced with all sorts of options to deliver services, from virtualized and software-defined to software as a service and desktop as a service. It seems every vendor in our industry has some sort of offering around as a service or cloud. Further, we're forced to adopt these new models of computing while still trying to include models from days gone by. Think healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, who have applications that innovate at glacial speeds. Nonetheless, we are in the cloud era, and cloud workspaces are increasingly becoming the standard. However, as workspaces move towards the cloud, new questions arise. For example, how do we continue to deliver a great user experience? How do we maximize our budget or offset the costs introduced by cloud? And importantly, how do we mitigate the risk and keep our endpoints secure? And this last question has become increasingly important during the pandemic and our highly distributed and remote workforce. And this is where IGEL comes into the fold. IGEL OS is IGEL's platform-independent, Linux-based endpoint operating system that's designed for simple, smart, and secure access to virtual applications, desktops, and of course, cloud workspaces. IGEL OS turns any compatible x86 or 64 device into a secure IGEL managed endpoint. Provides outstanding audio, video, interactive graphics, and unified communications. And it's also constantly updated with the latest version of the most popular codecs to really drive a rich, immersive experience. And last but not least, it's backed by secure management control software. And cloud and digital workspaces come with significant benefits, most of which you here today entirely understand and have reaped. From an IT perspective, system administrators need only apply system changes and application updates to a single centralized system rather than to individual client devices. Security is much simpler to define and enforce, as all critical applications and data are confined to a centralized location instead of distributed outward across all devices. Further, a common design in digital workspace platforms is to create a system that reverts to original state after use, and that prevents any lingering or unwanted system changes from persisting or propagating. And IT can also deliver services across a wide range of devices and over network conditions that may change at a moment's notice, but still guarantee a positive, seamless, and repeatable user experience. And as we progress towards hybrid work, with staff perhaps gradually returning to in-office activities, digital workspaces ensure the experience in office is the same experience out of office. And that allows our staff to literally work anywhere. And IGEL OS supports any cloud workspace solution. including AWS, Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop, VMware, and of course our personal favorite, Citrix, and any device across any location. IGEL management, which we'll discuss in a future event, provides robust, purpose-built platform to simplify complex enterprise management. And of course, it's also smart, simple, and secure, and can scale effortlessly to support thousands of endpoints. IGEL, when we talk about simple, we're not kidding. It is dead simple. Firstly, IGEL devices are all centrally controlled and managed through IGEL's Universal Management Suite, or UMS, that provides a familiar administrative experience to design, define, and deploy configurations across an entire fleet of IGEL devices, as well as perform centralized conversions of non-IGEL devices to IGEL OS. UMS can be extended in functionality to manage IGEL OS regardless of where that device exists, whether that's in office, home, or anywhere for that matter. Again, we'll talk about this in greater length in a future event. And IGEL's Ready program and their deep commitment to user experience has created an embedded platform that supports over 80 technologies baked within the IGEL OS to provide a universal and versatile access platform that IT gets to choose what services are required. This not only simplifies life for IT, but also provides the users with only the services and options they need to function and get to productive in a modular and quick approach. This allows IT to keep IGEL OS endpoints thin, of course, to minimize the attack surface. IGEL OS is available in several deployment options, including bare metal installs or conversions on x86 or x64 assets you already own. It's also available as a portable USB-based UD Pocket that temporarily converts an existing device to IGEL. This is what we were talking about at the start, that if you are interested, we'll send you one. And lastly, also as purpose-built IGEL devices. And you know, today IT budgets are under more pressure than ever. And most IT teams now understand that the total cost of deploying and managing Windows endpoints at scale is significant. Hardware purchases, device provisioning, OS upgrades, patches, remote configuration, and technical support are all costs that influence overall TCO. IGEL OS saves money by minimizing capital expenditures, by extending the life of existing hardware assets, and in some cases by many years, delays or eliminates the disruption and cost of investing in new hardware. Existing hardware can be converted centrally and easily to IGEL OS. And as endpoints are replaced due to failure, for example, existing IGEL licenses can be moved from one endpoint to another. And future-proofing your infrastructure further reduces unnecessary IT expenditures, ensures easier scalability while maintaining flexibility in how your workspaces evolve. For example, if you are heavily invested in Citrix today, but evolve away to, let's say, Windows Virtual Desktop down the road, with IGEL, you are not locked into a workspace solution. Alternatively, if you're invested in VMware and Dell thin clients, it's entirely possible to transition to Citrix and IGEL without a massive reinvestment in end-user hardware. IGEL simply works with almost any workspace solution. And back in January of 2020, IGEL commissioned a report to evaluate a Windows 10 migration TCO model that compared the costs of migrating using a traditional approach requiring new hardware versus leveraging IGEL OS and legacy hardware to provide Windows 10 virtual desktops for end users. The TCO evaluation demonstrated the dramatic economic benefits of leveraging existing hardware for users as a virtual desktop client. Of course, along with the corresponding reductions in support costs, lightweight endpoints running IGEL OS. And when we're thinking of costs, it's not just the displacement of hardware spend. It's also the software that is no longer needed on these endpoints, outside of Microsoft Windows too. Think about antivirus, remote control software, VPN licensing, and miscellaneous third-party management tools. Additionally, as customers are still struggling with the Windows 7 to Windows 10 migration, you're being forced to purchase Windows 7 extended support, a significant cost that increases year over year. And on that point, as a matter of fact, in May 2020, Computer World estimated that 28% of Windows PCs still run Windows 7, an entire 4 months after end of support for Windows 7 passed. Needless to say, the migration to Windows 10 has proven daunting for many organizations, and the use of digital workspaces such as Citrix in combination with IGEL OS can significantly expedite your transition to Windows 10 and perhaps forego the need for an additional year of Windows 7 extended support. It's November. If you're in that situation, you've likely already extended support for Windows 7. Let's get ahead of that next year. IGEL also offers on their website a really simplified TCO calculator. I urge you to try it out yourself. The link here is noted in the slide. I ran through a quick simulation of comparing 500 traditional desktops being acquired and deployed to that of a hardware thin client or repurposing existing PCs to run IGEL OS. Occasionally, the reports we get out of the United States are a little skewed in the massive deployments. So this brings it down a bit more realistic to Canadian mid-market and small enterprise. And over a period of 3 years, the cost savings of all factors, be it hardware, software, environmental, and human capital, provided a potential savings of over $800,000. I think this is US dollars too. So that's, geez, my math, nearly $1 million. So these results are revolutionary, provide immense value to business. You can experience up to a 20% reduction in power costs, a 45% reduction in hardware costs, and a 75% reduction in administrative costs. Yet these costs don't necessarily represent the bigger picture around potential cost avoidance. Think of security, data breaches, news headlines, impacts to reputation. And that's why many organizations that adopt remote desktop session hosts, virtual desktops, desktop as a service, or cloud workspaces do so in part to reduce security exposure at the endpoint. Moving Windows OS execution from endpoints to a centralized data center or cloud environments supports this goal in numerous ways. However, an OS footprint on the endpoint is still required to deliver these remote application and desktop access, of course, and support local connectivity, display, and peripheral requirements. And IGEL OS was created with this specific purpose in mind. As it's based on Linux and structured as a modular read-only firmware base, IGEL OS has an extremely small attack surface and a broad array of security-focused features designed to minimize exposure and prevent attackers from infiltrating your organization through the most popular entry point, the network edge. Security-conscious organizations can finally be confident that the core operating system on the endpoint has not been compromised. Things like support of two-factor authentication, smart card readers, biometric scanners, and trusted execution also increase security posture, as does functionality such as auto log off, Active Directory support, Kerberos, USB management, secure boot, and integrated single sign-on through third-party providers such as Gemalto or SafeNet. Additionally, as a modular, read-only, highly secure Linux-based operating system, IGEL OS is resistant to manipulation, viruses, and other forms of malware. I've been talking for far too long. I want to take this opportunity to turn it over to Mike Berman, SE for IGEL, for a demonstration of IGEL OS in action. And today, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, you'll be walking us through IGEL OS and integration with Citrix Digital Workspaces. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right, I'm going to figure out how to give you control
Excellent.
And we'll turn it over to you.
Fantastic. I'll wait for a button to pop up on my screen here.
There you go, sir.
Look at that. Like magic.
I will mute myself. Good luck, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Hello, all. All right. I'm hoping that everybody can see a screen that looks like a Windows computer. Someone confirm that for me?
Yeah, I can see it, Mike.
Excellent. Good. Because I don't have a little reflector here that shows me what you're seeing. So the way I'm going to do the demos for you today is I'm just going to do a couple of end user experience demos, kind of what would it look like if you implement IGEL in the infrastructure. And then after I'm done a few of these demos, I'll roll the IGEL back to what does this thing look like factory, so you can see all the configurations and settings that I've done on the box. And then we'll open it up for questioning. So the thing that differentiates IGEL from everybody else out there, like Matt said, is that we use native clients from the vendors. So what we have baked into the IGEL operating system is the current version of Citrix Workspace app, as well as an older version of receiver should you need to talk to an older Zen type of an environment. So we always have native receivers and Workspace app installed, directly installed inside of our operating system. So this is the exact version that you can go and grab from citrix.com. So what I'm going to do is I'll do these demos, and at the end of the demos, I'll pause for questions. And the reason I'll do it that way is that you may have a question about something that I'm going to show you in the next demo. So this just kind of allows us to flow through this, and at the end, we'll just open up any questions here. So because we use native Citrix receiver, it's baked in, it's always running in the back end. And because we're a regular native version of Linux with some lockdown and security, we also include not only native receivers and clients, but we also include native browsers. So inside of the IGEL operating system, we include both Chrome as well as Firefox. So these are native browsers that are baked directly into the IGEL operating system. So these are Firefox for Linux and Chromium for Linux. And I can log in here with my Citrix credentials and get into my Citrix environment using the web version. Whoops, gotta learn passwords. Using the web versions, you can see that I can get desktops and apps, and I can get that in Chromium, or I can get there here. If I mark something in a favorite here and I go over here and I can get it any way that I want to get it within the environment. If I start an application, for instance, here's WordPad, you know, the first Citrix application obviously takes that, call it, I like to say 10 to 15 seconds to get your first application up. So there's my first Citrix application. But then when I click on my next application, it's pretty much instantaneous. And for those of you that were following along, notice that I started my first application in Chrome and I started my second application in Firefox. Really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's, you know, Citrix Workspace app that's happening in the background there. I can log on to as many applications as I need to going into the environment. And then when I'm done, I can just simply close off all of my applications and be clean again, just like I would be in any other type of Citrix environment. So this shouldn't be something that people aren't familiar with, because this is your traditional logging on to Citrix via a web browser. All right, so what can we do other than that? Well, because it's native Citrix receiver, we have other ways. It's not just going through a browser. Now, back in the day, you know, Citrix likes to call things different names. And, you know, when I was back at Citrix years ago, this thing was called Dazzle, and then it was called self-service. And, you know, it's gone through a couple of iterations here. But really what it is, and once I start it up, you guys will all know what I'm talking about. This guy, right? Where you log in here, it looks like a browser, smells like a browser, tastes like a browser, but it's kind of embedded in its own little application. And this was that Dazzle piece. And if you notice, the favorite that I made when I was over there using it in the browser followed me all the way over here. So it's retaining all of that information as it should. going from session to session, because that's all retained inside a Citrix storefront. Again, I can see all of my applications. Here's the one that I put the favorite on, and I also have access to desktops. Now, in the sake of time, I'm not going to bother starting an application or anything here because we have seen it before, but this is kind of where you go into that Citrix workspace, or what they used to call Dazzle. Now, when I really go out there and I show IGEL and Citrix and stuff to customers, it's really about the integration that Citrix has put all that extra work into over the years, from the days of MetaFrame all the way to where we up to today, where you get that full operating system integration. So the apps look and feel as if they're locally installed inside the operating system. So here, I'm going to log in again. But you'll see this time, rather than opening up an application to run an application, which is kind of silly, and I've always said that. Those of you that know me from my Citrix days know how ludicrous I thought it was for things like Program Neighborhood and things like that, and a browser. The concept of telling a user to start an application so that they can start an application just doesn't, it doesn't even sound like something you'd want to say, because users don't like to have to click 6 times for something that they could really click only once. So to tell them that, okay, if you want to start Word, the first thing you need to do is you need to start a browser. And then once you start a browser, then you can start Word. Like, that's insane. Why not just let me start Word? So here we have full direct integration once I log into Workspace app, that I can have the application show up on the user's start menu as in Windows, or I can have it right here on the desktop. And when I double click on an icon, I get full SSO because I've logged into Workspace app already. So those credentials are there, and as a user, I can just simply now double click on the applications that I need to do my job and go about my business. I can type here, Control A, Control C, move her over here, Control V. So this thing functions exactly the way that a Windows PC would. I can minimize stuff to the bottom, I can bring them back, and when I'm all said and done, I can just simply close this guy off and I'm done. At the end of the day, I just simply log off my workspace, and you'll notice here, because we use native Workspace app and I've got session lingering turned on in my environment, it's giving me that option. Okay, buddy, what do you want to do? Do you want to disconnect your session, or do you actually want to log off? And in our case, we're just going to simply log off. That logs me out of the Citrix environment and puts this machine into a situation where the next user that comes has to log in to be able to get into the environment. So now I can just simply log in as another user and go about my business. So this gives me that integration, and this works really, really well for the work from home user, where you could install the IGEL operating system on a USB stick. I take that USB stick, I go home to my Mac, to my PC, whatever I happen to have as my own piece of hardware. I boot from that USB stick. It locks me out from all underlying hardware unless administration explicitly gives me access to USB drives or other things that may be in my hardware. But by default, you have no access to anything. And then I can simply boot up, log into Citrix, and off I go. But what about if I'm in a situation where I'm using this more in an internal environment? And if you think about the way your internal environments work today, you don't have PCs that are just sitting on desktops that are logged in, that people can just simply walk up to and click on icons and go about their business. They got to somehow prove to you that they actually belong to this company. So you provide them with the ability to log in with Active Directory. Now, IGEL devices will never be members of your Active Directory domain. The machines themselves will not be AD domain members. However, we can use tokens and have LDAP or LDAP-S do a lookup, tokenize those credentials, and pass them all the way through to the Citrix environment, simulating a full Active Directory logon. So here I am on the IGEL. This is what it looks like when it boots up. I put in my Active Directory credentials here. Those credentials will be verified over LDAP-S to Active Directory. Once they've been verified, they get passed through to Citrix Workspace app, and I have all of my applications positioned for me either on my desktop, in my start menu, or a combination of both, that I can now go about my business of going to work. I can start the applications that I need to start. I can go about doing what I need to do. My day goes on as I normally do. I work on my applications. But the difference here is that when I'm done at the end of my day and I'm finished for the day, when I log, excuse me, when I log off of my IGEL, not only do I log off a storefront, which you saw down at the bottom there, but I take out that security breach potential that users have. Users log on to Citrix and log on to their desktop, and then they forget to log off of their desktop itself. Citrix is now, and this could be VMware, this could be WVD, this could be any other virtual solution, and they walk away from their machine at a desktop. Now, normally that wouldn't be a challenge, but I've also got Citrix or whatever I've got running in the background where a user can just simply double click on the icon and get back in because the credentials are cached. We have the ability, and it can be turned on, scripted, however you want to do it. As you noticed, when I logged off of Citrix, not only did it log me off of Citrix, but it actually logged me all the way back out to the logon screen of the operating system, ensuring that users don't walk away without logging off of the complete session. In other words, just closing down Citrix and walking away is not good, because another user could simply walk over to that box and double click on an icon and go in as you. So this ensures that when a user logs off, not only does it excuse me, log them off of Citrix, but it also ensures that it logs me off of the actual physical device itself, so that there's no way for anyone else to log in. The last demo I'll show you on the kind of logging into your traditional Citrix environment is, what if you're doing some form of a virtual desktop, some form of VDI, whether it's hosted shared desktops, whether it's a desktop in the cloud, whether it's a true Win 10 desktop, a Win 7 desktop, in Azure, it doesn't really matter. But if you're doing VDI, then really the only purpose of the IGEL operating system is to give you enough operating system to run a secure client to connect me to my desktop. Because in reality, everything I need is inside of my VDI. So if you're doing VDIs and users only have to go to the desktop, we can make that a completely elegant and secure connection for the user, where they simply log on with their Active Directory credentials. You'll notice on the next screen, I have no icons, no start menus, no nothing, because realistically, the only thing the user needs to get to is this, which is their virtual desktop, which is where they're going to do all of their work. So everybody is able to now get into a full virtual desktop and go about their business and do whatever they need to do. You'll notice that we have full integration and optimization for Cisco meetings as well as Microsoft Teams. So these are full Citrix optimizations or offloading like they used to do with Skype. And you can do it for Teams, you can do it for Cisco meetings, you can do it for Skype for Business, you can do it really for anything you want. And then the same thing like the demo before, when I simply sign off of my virtual desktop, not only do I log off of my virtual desktop, but I also ensure that I log off of my Citrix session and bring me all the way back out so that I log on securely as the next user. I'll pause here for a couple of questions that I'll ask and see if anyone is doing one of these two things, and I'll show it. If not, we can just pause for questions. If there's anyone out there today that's using or looking at the Citrix Intelligent Workspace or Microsoft WVD. So if there's anybody on the call that's using either one of those technologies or interested in either one of those technologies, Maybe if you want to put a message in the bin, or unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, they can't unmute themselves, but quiet bunch. But I do have a question for you that came in. I know the
Sure.
answer, but I'm gonna give it to you. Maybe
37.8.
yes, meaning of life. No, that 43.
Yeah, that's it.
Can your
Exactly.
Mike? Can your thin clients be used at users' homes or remote office using?
Yes.
That's using Citrix VPN. Yes. Okay. How do they
Yes.
connect back to the management server?
Okay, great question. Great question. So we're not going to go too much in detail, but let's just start at this level. IGEL is an operating system company that sells hardware. So the only thing that IGEL sells is pieces of physical hardware, because we've been in business for 30 odd years making it, but we are an OS. So basically you're buying a license. There are pieces of the IGEL infrastructure that get included at no cost. One of those is the management suite. And as Matt mentioned at the top of this webinar, we're going to have some follow-up webinars. The second one is going to actually look at the management suite and how you do some basic configurations. And then the last one's going to go into a real big deep dive. And part of that deep dive is going to be talking about what we call the IGEL Cloud Gateway. The IGEL Cloud Gateway is a virtual machine that you build. It's based on Linux. There's no cost. IGEL doesn't charge for any of our auxiliary products that are needed to make the environment work. It's basically licensing, and we have two. One goes on the box. You need that license. It's the workspace license that turns on the IGEL OS. The second license we have is what's called the Enterprise Management Pack. And inside of that management pack, there's a whole bunch of different features that get turned on. And one of those features are the ability to access the IGEL Cloud Gateway. And what the IGEL Cloud Gateway does is it allows your management suite, that is wherever you want it in your secure LAN, in the cloud, doesn't matter where it is, to reach out via this gateway appliance over SSL and touch devices that are off the corporate LAN. So there's no firewall ports that have to be opened. There's no inward traffic from IGEL devices into your corporate infrastructure. What this appliance allows is your management suite that you've already built to reach out via the gateway and configure, shadow, manage, kill pill, do whatever you need to do for IGEL devices that are off the corporate LAN. Now, the management suite is not required in the infrastructure to make Citrix connections. It's not a proxy. When you use an IGEL device, it doesn't go through management to find everything else. Management is there only for configuring devices and shadowing devices and supporting devices. But once that's done, when I double click on that Citrix icon, the IGEL device is going directly to your NetScaler. It is not going back through the management suite or anything like that. So the answer to your question is you can fully manage devices that are internal and external with a no-cost appliance that basically is a VPN for IGEL traffic only.
Great, thanks, Mike. And yeah, our next event, we're going to go deep into UMS, ICG, run through profiles, and not a lot of people noticed in the background there while you were doing your demonstration. I knew on another screen you had UMS running and you were dropping
Yes.
profiles to quickly adjust the configuration of that IGEL. Our attendees didn't see that and don't necessarily know that, but the drag and drop functionality of UMS to instantly adjust the configuration of an entire fleet of IGELs is extremely simple. And as a matter of fact, we've had or heard some stories of massive outages of a workspace solution, be it Citrix or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And for those clients who had invested in IGEL, well, they were out of luck because Citrix was down. But we could quickly define a profile to facilitate the local Chromium or local Firefox to provide access to Office 365 and some SaaS applications quickly while IT overcame the challenges on the Citrix side. So users could be a bit productive in some SaaS applications, web applications, and not necessarily be at a standstill because Citrix was down. Another question
we had
came
a hospital.
in.
We had a hospital in the U.S. that did exactly that, Matt. They had a data center outage, and because IGEL devices are not domain devices, it was irrelevant that the domain was down, right? All they needed was a machine that had access to UMS, and in less than 10 minutes, they were 70% productive because they were a Microsoft 365 customer. So they had both their data and their apps obviously running in Microsoft 365. So just like you said, they were quickly able to throw icons on the desktop for Word, Excel, Outlook, everything is including their data, but they used the SaaS version. So they quickly just pushed icons down to all of these machines that they instantly had access back to 70% of their productivity.
Right. Oh, that's great. And yeah, and the cool thing is I have a UD Pocket here, though I don't use it much because I rarely leave home. That configuration goes with me, regardless of where I am. The moment I plug that UD Pocket in, it will communicate back to UMS via ICG, pick up any changes in my configuration. And to that point, one of the questions here is how do the devices actually get the security updates?
Great question. Great question. So we release quarterly releases of the firmware unless there's a security vulnerability that's found. So just to give you an idea, when Spectre and Meltdown were released, we were less than 7 days for a dot release. So we are agile enough that if there's a security vulnerability that's being discovered, we can have that usually out within the week because our OS is modular and we can slip space things in and out as needed. And the same thing would go for a Citrix receiver. So with Workspace app, 2009, let's just say, had some challenges, and we'll leave it politically correct saying that they released 2010 to fix it. So we had a dot release available within 2 days of Citrix providing it available on the web, that Citrix customers could then have the latest version of Citrix receiver. So that's how it gets done by IGEL. Now, once IGEL releases this thing, a full firmware update, like if you needed to push it out there, whether you're internal or in the cloud at home or whatever, is about 3 minutes. And all you would do is internally, you would just update devices, you would download the firmware, put it on UMS, push it out there. For your devices that are on the outside world, ideally you want to put the firmware just on the outside world, Azure, Amazon, your own private space, doesn't really matter where it is, as long as it's on the outside world. And then you can tell the IGEL devices to point to that location to get their firmware update. And remember, there's no intellectual property there because all of your IP is still coming from UMS. So all of your settings, your certificates, your Citrix, all of that is still coming from UMS. But the actual binaries of the operating system, you can put on the outside world and tell all the devices that are at home to go out and update from this Azure Blob or this AWS storage repository, really wherever it is. And you can have it happen on boot up, you can have it happen on shutdown, or you can happen based on a timing, or now, I need to update these devices now. And it initiates the update on the device. Like I said, the whole thing takes about 3 minutes to happen. And then all your IGEL devices are going to be updated. You can run it however you want, so you can schedule it. If you have smaller offices, you can do updates on a buddy system where one device will update itself and then all the other devices will update from it. So if you think about locations that may be remote and may not have great internet connection, where you have more than one device, only one device would have to update itself over the wire, and then all the other devices can update it over the local LAN. So you have many, many choices of doing firmware and security updates. Quarterly is when the normal stuff comes out, but any vulnerabilities that are discovered that affect the Linux operating system, are usually out within, within days to weeks.
Thanks, Mike. All right, so we're going to do the last question here, because one of the things I want to do today is give everyone about 10 minutes back in their day to decompress before the next Zoom call. Next question is, can you create a failover device profile if the production profile / Citrix URL is offline? You can fail over to a backup profile or URL. This is hearing this, it's not necessarily an IGEL question. I would probably talk about load balancing.
That's what I would say.
GSLB.
I would say this goes down to GSLB, NetScalers. These are, so the answer is yes to both, Matt. So can you do it on the IGEL? Of course, we could have you pointing to 2 different URLs, and you could pick which one you want at start. We could push out a change instantaneous if we need to point them to a different URL. You could have a browser available, so if something is not working, they can simply use a browser and type in a URL. Or like you said, Matt, it becomes at the infrastructure level where we make this thing completely seamless to the end user, and we handle it with NetScalers, GSLB, and load balancing, where the user just clicks on an icon, and that icon knows how to find things.
Right. Well, that answers the questions from the audience today. Mike or Ed, was there anything else? I know Ed's been rather quiet. That's okay.
I've just been enjoying the show.
Was there anything else you guys wanted to discuss today or bring up or note?
I guess other things just to remember is that things like kill pills exist, right? So users that are at home, you're able to blow it away. And I'm going to ask a trivia question, and nobody really is going to have the answer because it doesn't exist.
Uh-oh.
But from the Citrix environment there, if you think about today how you do your Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, WVD, it doesn't matter what you do. In the days when everybody came into the office, we didn't care much about things like social engineering and getting into computers and stealing and touching and feeling. But in today's world where everybody's working in their basement or in their office, where they've got lots of different things that they can, let's say, liberate intellectual property without you knowing. And yeah, I get the song and dance. Well, they're all mitigating it with watermarking this, that. That's only helps if you're planning on posting that information. But if you're simply looking to take intellectual property out and you do Citrix in a way that you used to do it, think about this. You're going home with FQDNs that you can reverse engineer to find out IP schemes, domain names, usernames, passwords, 2-factor authentications. You're going home with everything you need to come into the environment in your little Frankenstein lab at home to take as much intellectual property out as you want, because nobody's there watching you. So my question to you is, tell me one letter in my Citrix farm, server name, domain name, anything, other than IGEL1 as my username and something as my password.
No,
and that's the beauty of this. You're sending users home that the way that they can connect to the secure environment is with IGEL, where they have no idea what the URLs are. They have no idea what FQDNs are. They have no idea how to get into this environment other than with the secure key. And the only thing that's on that is username, password, and maybe a 2-factor authentication. But if I go to my mother-in-law's and I don't have my key, there's no way for me to log in on her unsecure computer and start doing secret work from work and printing stuff and leaving it all over the place. There's no way to do that. The IGEL completely allows you to secure the environment with no way of circumventing it. You don't know how to get in other than with the key. And that's the huge level of security that gets brought to the table.
Yeah, and you just gave me a great idea, and I think we'll do this relatively soon because it is a hot topic. How do we mitigate risk of a mobile workforce? And not only IGEL on its own and the ability to do security by obscurity and all the native support for 2-factor and single sign-up, but there's also capability in ADC NetScaler where we could say only allow this page to be presented to an IGEL device. And so if I come from any other Windows 10, no, sorry, you're out of luck. Not allowed from this type of device. I have to put in my UD Pocket boot up securely, and then I'm allowed to go in. So maybe,
and we can do things. Remember, we're a real Linux operating system. So I had one of the governments out west say, yeah, you tell me all of this, but what about if a user just simply uses like a virtual machine and boots the UD Pocket there? Well, then they've got all their tools back. And I go, you're right. But what about if I check the type of machine I'm on before I even boot the UD Pocket? So because I'm Linux, I can actually look down to the board level and verify that it's not virtual. So for this customer, if you boot the UD Pocket, normally it works. If you boot it inside of a virtual machine, it realizes that it's not physical, and it actually pops up a message that says, this must be booted from whatever you want. You can put the message whatever you want, and then it physically shuts itself off.
Right. Great. Yeah.
Right. So no way of circumventing the security in the environment.
Good topic that we'll drill home on in a future event. But for now, I did promise 10 minutes back in your day. I did want to thank Ed and Mike for joining me today, and to each of you. I understand how challenging it is to devote time in your busy schedules, and how often you're being bombarded with webinars and digital events these days. For that, thank you very much. We hope you found value in the content today. And at the conclusion, a brief survey will be shown. If you are interested in a personalized IGEL UD Pocket, please let us know, and be sure to watch out for our next invite in the IGEL series, and probably that, hardening up endpoints and what ADC can do to really increase your posture in combination with IGEL. And last but not least, the part I'm sure you're all excited about, our winner of the $200 Indigo Chapters gift card will notify you by email. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of the day and week. It is a gorgeous 20+ degrees here again in Southern Ontario. We hope
in November.
November. Hope you get a chance to enjoy it. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, all. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.